Welcome to MindWise, an audio and video podcast exploring holistic perspectives on mental health care, psychology, neuroscience, spirituality, and wellness. I am your host, Dr. Ron Parks, a writer, teacher, and physician. Today, we're going to explore Vigilance and Memory, Safeguarding Humanity After the Holocaust, a call to remember the words from a survivor, the poet Iren Steier, that brings the reality of past to inform the present. My family journey through loss, reunion, and remembrance. I recall a poignant personal story I wrote about my reunion with an aged cousin of my mother's during a visit to Israel, who was believed lost in a Nazi concentration camp. Her location was revealed through a letter my mother gave me before her death. The realization now is that it was the deepest and darkest proximity I've experienced to the heart of tragedy, human cruelty, and the depravity of others towards humanity. The evilest side of humankind inflicted on vulnerable people by one of the most sinister forces in the history of our civilization. It all shows the resilience and the beaming forth of the human spirit and our greatest strength and power to reach the highest states of enlightenment and pure spirit. As a child in the late 1940s, my mother took me to a local shoe repair shop on Upshur Street in Washington, D.C. The shop was near the row house community where we lived. The struggling shoemaker, amid his buzzing machines, appeared to be quiet, humble man, his face worn by years of hardship. He had an unfamiliar accent. My mother knew he was from Hungary, where her parents lived before migrating to this country in the late 1800s. My mother showed him letters she had received from a cousin, Iren, her age, whom she had visited as a small child with her mother while seeing their family in Hungary before the war years. I understood that a terrible war had occurred in Eastern Europe, and it was over with a German defeat. As a child, I only knew that horrible things had happened to the unfortunate people living there, including my mother's cousin and her family. Her cousin, Iren, was now a refugee from her destroyed home and community, having lost family members. With a voice of despair, the shoemaker in the store translated and read the letters to my mother. He helped write and address my mother's letters in Hungarian to my mother's cousins, along with whatever money or goods my mother could send. My mother was never sure that her letters or anything she sent would reach her or get past the authorities or the people providing her refuge. She received the last letter from her cousin after the war had ended, which included her new address in Israel, where she had successfully migrated. The letter expressed hope of seeing my mother in the future. The cousin could reach Israel after her release from the Nazi concentration camp in a brief stay at a refugee center as one of the few family survivors. The Germans had invaded her hometown in Transylvania near the Hungarian border, destroyed her community, and left her without a place to return to. No further attempts to make contacts were successful. Years later, when my mother could finally travel to Israel, she was terribly disappointed not to find her cousin. Before my mother died, she gave me the well-kept last letter from Iren, hoping I would reconnect with her one day. In the late 70s, my wife and I traveled to Israel, taking with us the old worn letter from Iren that my mother had given me before her death. It was my quest to find her, hoping she was still alive. What transpired when we arrived in Israel was a blessing and an inspiration beyond my beliefs and expectations. On a warm sunny day in the arid desert-like landscape, my wife and I walked into the modest hotel lobby near Jerusalem. We were to meet a newfound niece of my mother's dear cousin. We were young and full of wonder, adventure, excitement, and anticipation that something profound would soon happen. My mother hoped that I would find her beloved cousin and complete the connection she had hoped to for since her childhood visit to the European family and their occasional letters thereafter. Now, Iren's niece drove us to a rustic lodge where Iren and her husband were staying. I had found Iren's niece by taking the envelope my mother's had given me with the old address and family name to a multilingual shop owner. He took time out from his work in his small stall-like shop to phone. It seemed like at least 20 or so people with the family name similar to the one on my mother's envelope. He kept telling her its story until Iren's niece recognized it on one of the calls. The shopkeeper was so sweet to help us, and of course we brought a few gifts to remember him and his colorful shop. When we walked into the room, Iren, now in her 80s, appeared slightly frail with a concentration upper tattooed on her arm, beaming with such warmth and a smile that melted our hearts. We all cried and hugged. A profound sense of meaning came with the joining of our hearts and the family's past. The occasion was also profoundly moving, as we had visited the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem the day before. There were many reminders of the era's horrific events, including the exhibit of thousands of children's shoes belonging to those sent to the crematoriums at the death camps. Some of these children were from my mother's and Irene's family. It was profound to meet Iren, a survivor of one of the worst tragedies in modern history. Iren had not only survived, but as I perceived, had moved to a much higher place of spirituality and love, though she still carried the deep scars and her losses and sacrifices. She had become an accomplished poet and gave me poems about her Holocaust experience, written in her native Hungarian, in search of meaning and suffering and her loss. When I returned to the States, I found a Hungarian professor who translated her poems. January 27th, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. In 2005, the United Nations General Assembly designated January 27th as the International Day of Commemoration in the memory of the victims of the Holocaust, making the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The annual observance served as a worldwide reminder of the dangers posed by drift towards rogue and extremist authoritarian rule, hatred, bigotry, antisemitism. People across the globe are called to remember, reflect, and act to prevent history from repeating itself with commemorative events. What became startlingly clear in the worst of history can repeat itself. A warning to maintain vigilance is evident in the persistence of less visible undercurrents that can build towards a potential recurrence. It is more worrisome when individuals and groups develop a lack of human public responsibility and respect for diversity and show behaviors that suggest a need to control, gain power, and accumulate wealth at the public's expense. Drift in this direction is clear from both the ideological extremes of the right and left. The perpetrators of fear and division gain traction by stroking basic human fears of losing essentials such as livelihood, economic security, and food and shelter, and of being overrun or replaced by others. Ideologically polarized political parties achieve dominance by often or sometimes espousing disinformation that foments hatred, fear, and division. Today, technological advances in communications make it easier for entities seeking an advantage to influence to the point of becoming destructive forces against public welfare. Technology also makes it easier for ill-intentioned people to take advantage of others by manipulating human frailties through deception, rhetoric, and propaganda. The reality is that what occurred in the past can gain momentum and again lead to the degradation of the social fabric, democracy, and the environment essential to health and well-being. The enduring lesson and warning from history's darkest chapter. Iren was one of the few in her village and family to survive the Holocaust and the Nazi concentration camps and lived to write about the ordeal. Her poems were written from 1944 to 1945 during the last days at her native town of Navigord and as a prisoner at Auschwitz. As Iren wished, her poems are shared to remind everyone never to forget and to watch for any movement toward hatred, division, or occurrence of the tragic history she had experienced. Her poems offer a poignant reminder of the fate of democracy that evolves into a brutal, totalitarian fascist government. A haunting point from a survivor of Auschwitz journey and the gripping reality of her tragic experience. A translated poem by Iren Steier, my mother's cousin, is below, a warning that the poem in its entirety is harsh, graphic, and shocking, but shared because of Iren's wish to keep people aware that without vigilance and remembrance of the tragic history, recurrence can be a future reality. Auschwitz by Iren Steier. In a far, strange country, very, very far, where maybe the star in the sky is even different, where there is no fret, not even the grass, from where even fine words has no message. A train rumbling into the hell of Polish earth. It brings wounded, deprived prisoners. Its doors open, and 10,000 Jews are driven into rows, some alive and some dead. And thousands of Jews are coming and fall on and on. Their unsteady eyes are searching for light. The prisoner whisper, give them your child. Is it possible that you save your own life thereby? I will not give up my child. Never, never, never. And her two embracing arms clasped it to her bosom. So they line up, mother with children, to the great executor with throbbing hearts. And the spouses come hand in hand, and not even a minute their lives are divided. I go to the right, he goes to the left. This is life, the other is death. We are looking on craving. Whose fate will be what? Mother, father, brothers, why do I find them? Why do they come with me on this journey? My eyes stare far. I'm looking unsteadily. Where will my dearest brethren be taken? Mengele, the executor, waves here and there. Who could know that left means death? If we had known this, maybe we would have all gone there. Where will we die together? With our beloved ones? The march is on, to the left, to the road of grief. Their dearest lives were taken from them, to the kiss of death, where its leprous stomach devours them continuously and drank blood amply to quench its thirst. And then he danced devilish dance and hung the clanging prisoner chains on the living ones, within spike wires, haunted by their hounds, the ragged army to the right, with my eyes cast down. For the complete poems and other poems by Iren Steier, go to www.inmindwise.com/p./remembering the Holocaust. Tips of prevention is needed to break the recurrent cycle of division and hate fueled by ideological and political difference. These cycles are fueled by the rise of divisive, authoritarian, and destructive leaders, and by the fomenting age-old animosities towards minority and towards wise and enlightened leaders must rise to the top to foster peace, cooperation, and well-being for the populace. Be informed by history, be more aware, and be active in preventing tragedies from reoccurring. Peaceful coexistence can return through a strategic alliance at the highest levels, the positive use of educational programs, the wise use of artificial and social media. Dedicated world organizations need to thrive and grow to combat destructive tribalism and selfish interests, recognizing that to exist, we must coexist and cooperate for everyone's mutual interests, security, health, and safety. Support research and resources that promote a better society and advance understanding of the psychology and neuroscience of human behavior and personalities that drive greed, suppression of others, hatred, violence against minority, violence against vulnerable populations. Solutions are needed to provide more adequate resources for those vulnerable to mental health challenges. More clarity is needed about the impact of misinformation and propaganda on large population segments in our digital age of social media to prevent misuse of self-serving and promoting entities. The hope is to foster the use of social media as tools for more just, safe, and peaceful coexistence. Study and practice equanimity and moderation as taught by influential past teachers and scholars, including the Stoics, yogis, Buddhists, Judeo-Christian teachers, and other spiritual and religious traditions. Let your awareness, fears, worries, resentments, extreme feelings wake you up, inspire you to make changes, and help you resolve problems that are present in yourself and others. For complete articles with reference or inquiries, go to parksmd.com, Library of Old Posts. For inquiries, go to parksmd.com/scheduling/. I appreciate your interest. Please share with others. Thanks to Sean Parks, editor and project manager, for his valuable contribution in editing. All content is created and published for educational purposes only and is not substitute professional medical service or guidance. Always consult a healthcare provider for care related to medical or mental health conditions. This communication does not provide medical diagnosis, recommendation, treatment, or endorsements. Thank you.